Good to see you here this evening. My name is Liam. I come from a church down in London, in Richmond, in Surrey, which is in West London. If you ever fly into London, you'll fly right over our church. When Concorde was on the go, we had to stop the services just to let it fly over, not in its direction. So we're very glad Concorde stopped going for the noise that it used to make. The church I was in used to be a Baptist church, but we've dropped the name because we found it a bit embarrassing. Nobody knew what it meant. And in England, Baptists are a bit of a cult. I don't know what they're like here. I don't know if there is one in cults, but there certainly is a cultic feel to it, so we dropped the name. But I remember the story of one young man who was just out of Baptist college. He was what we call in Baptist circles a big B Baptist. I won't tell you what the B stands for. It's not very polite. But he's a big B Baptist, which meant he was very enthusiastic about his Baptist convictions. He went to his new congregation. And he noticed in his congregation that there was a lady who came to his church, and she sat in the front row, and he immediately recognized her, that she was different from everyone else. For one, she was a well-dressed lady, and you don't get them very often in Baptist churches. So he reckoned she must be Church of Scotland, and he challenged her one day and discovered that in fact she was. She was Presbyterian, and he argued with her about her views about baptism. He tried to communicate his own views about baptism. And she resisted every one of his arguments. He tried as hard as he possibly could, but no, she wasn't going to be moved one way or the other. And so eventually he resorted to this argument. He asked her, why is it, ultimately, why is it that you are a Presbyterian? Why are you Church of Scotland? Well, she said, my father was Presbyterian, and my grandfather was Presbyterian, and my great-grandfather was Presbyterian, and I'm Presbyterian, proud of it, and I'm always going to be Presbyterian. The Baptist guy, he thought that was a very good argument. He said, are you telling me that if your father was a moron, and your grandfather was a moron, and your great-grandfather was a moron, that would make you a moron? No, she said. I guess that would make me a Baptist. I want to speak to you tonight about this defining passage in the Bible in John chapter 4. One of the great ideas behind this event is to teach us about worship. Not just about being together and singing praises, though that's an essential part of worship, praising God and lifting His name up, and we've been led in that this evening in a great time of praise. But as you already had indicated to you, the great dream behind this is that we would see that worship is something that is far bigger than what we do when we're together, something that spills over out of an event like this into the rest of our lives. You see, there's a conspiracy abroad. The conspiracy started in hell, and it's been fed by Christian literature and by some kinds of Christian teachers. And it goes something like this. It teaches us to look at our lives as having been divided up into segments. So there's our Christian segment. In our Christian segment, we read Christian books, and we sing Christian songs, and we meet with Christian people, and we go through the routine of our church attendance or going to events like this, and within that segment of our lives, we are as Christian as it's liable to get. We are card-carrying Christians. Then there's our work life, if you're working, and every day you're meeting a different group of people. You don't meet them in church. This is a different segment of society. You have your relationships there, and you go to parties with them, and you build relationships with them. But your work life is segmented from your religious life. And then there's your social life, the people that you go out with, the people that you party with, the people that you go to the shows with. This segment of your life. And that's separated from your work life and your religious life. And then there's your relationships, your relationship with your partner, your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend, your relationship with your husband or wife, the relationship with your children, if you have any, or with your parents. Your relationships, that's a different segment altogether. And we've so segmented our lives that there's very little interchange between these elements of our lives. And what we've done is we've managed to squeeze the God bit of our lives into a box. That box is bigger or smaller depending on what we've been taught. For some of us, that God bit in our lives only happens when we're at an event like this, or we're at church Sunday morning or Sunday evening, or whatever it is we go. Whatever it is, God is in a box, in our religious segment. He has nothing to say, nothing to do with the way we live our lives at work day by day. He certainly has nothing to do with what we do when we're out partying with our friends. And he has very little to say about our relationships within our families, among our circle of acquaintances. God is in a box. Now, when we talk about the subject of worship, what we're talking about is a vision of living our lives that in their totality, in a relationship with, under the eye of, and for the glory of God. The old catechism that Scottish children were brought up in 2 centuries ago, very first question that it asked was this: what is the chief end of man? The answer was, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. So what we're looking at this evening in this little story of Jesus and this Samaritan woman is an absolutely crucial passage of the Bible that teaches us what worship is about. Did you know that there's very little teaching in the Bible about the word worship, in the New Testament, that is? Did you know that when you look at the New Testament, the word worship is never used of a Christian meeting or of what Christians do when they're together? That is, it's never used by Paul, except on one occasion when he's talking about non-Christians getting converted in a Christian meeting, and as a result coming to worship God. It's never used by Peter, it's never used by John, it's never used by James. The word worship in the New Testament is focused in the Gospels and in the book of Revelation. In the Gospels, whenever people come into contact with the Lord Jesus, sometimes we're told they worshipped him. In the book of Revelation, when all the redeemed are in heaven and they're seeing the Lord Jesus as he is, we're told that the whole host of heaven worship him. So what's going to happen in the meantime, between Jesus being on earth and Jesus being in heaven? The people who knew him then and the people who will right now be in his presence, enjoying him, worshipping him, glorifying him, praising him. What are we to do in the meantime? What does the Bible tell us about worship right now? This passage in John 4 is crucial to an understanding of that. It tells us, first of all, that worship is a God-centered activity. Worship is a God-centered activity. Jesus says to this Samaritan woman, you know the Father is looking for worshippers. People who will worship him in spirit and truth. He is looking for people who will worship the Father, says Jesus. 3 times he says that. The Father is looking for people to worship him. That's what God is doing tonight. Maybe you've come into this room this evening and you're not a Christian. Do you know what God is in the business of doing? He's in the business of looking for men and women who will become worshippers of him. And the worship the Bible teaches about is God-centered worship. Just as our praise this evening has been God-centered praise. Because we understand that suffusing absolutely everything we do as men and women and as God's people, it has to be God who is at the center of things. Jesus taught that God is the subject and the object of all of our worship. God is the subject and the object of all of our worship. One of the songs we sing goes like this: it's not about me, it's all about you. And that says it all. It's all about God. So when we talk about worship, we are not thinking first and foremost about some kind of therapy that we get, some kind of blessing that we get. Worship is not a consumer activity. So people who go around and they say, well, I don't go to that church because I don't like the worship. Or who ask you the question, what was the worship